The housekeeper was only 22. My father was 68. I thought we just needed someone to cook clean and leave at the end of the day. 6 months later, that young woman stood before me, clutching her pregnant belly, sobbing, begging to stay. And when I found out who the father was, I understood some mistakes don't come with instruction manuals. They only teach you through heartbreak. I invite you to listen to this story to understand why some storms begin so quietly, yet can still sweep away an entire family. My father's name was Harold. That year, he was 68. He lived alone in a small house at the end of Clover Hill Street, 2 blocks from ours. The house was old but tidy, still carrying the scent of green tea every morning, the crackling of the AM radio at 6 a.m., and the framed photo of my mother on the fireplace mantel. She had passed away 3 years earlier. I was his only child. My husband and I ran a small appliance repair shop downtown. We left early and returned late. Our son Daniel was 19 and had just started at the local community college. Quiet, bookish, and the kind of boy who spent more time in his room than anywhere else. I had once suggested that my father come live with us, but he brushed it off. "I'm not crippled. Don't turn me into a burden." He said it with a half smile, half grumble. Older folks tend to fear becoming unnecessary. So I let him be. But after the day he slipped in, the bathroom had to pull himself up using the sink later, hiding a nasty bruise under his thick sweater. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I decided to hire a part-time housekeeper, someone who could come by every morning to cook clean, help him with his medication and blood pressure. In the evenings, if convenient, they might help out a bit at my place too. But I struggled to find the right person. Some were too old. Others had children to care for. A few were just too harsh and unkind. Just when I was about to give up, a friend referred me to a young woman named Elisa Romero, 22 years old, from the southern part of the state. She had worked in a factory but was laid off during the pandemic and was looking for something new. The first time I met Elisa was on a rainy February afternoon. She wore a faded khaki coat and a long skirt, carrying a worn-out cloth tote. Small in frame with warm brown skin, her hair tied back in a simple knot, Elisa had this gentle way about her, like someone who always apologized before even stepping into a room. "Do you know how to cook?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am. I usually cooked for my younger siblings. My mom sells vegetables from early morning," she replied. She called me ma'am even though I was only about 15 years older, but you could tell she had grown up too fast, shaped by a hard life. I brought Elisa over to my father's house. He was sitting on the porch reading the newspaper. "This girl will help you with chores every morning. Is that all right?" I asked. He looked at her for a long moment, didn't smile, just nodded. "She looks all right. Let's try a week and see." From that day on, Elisa began her routine. She arrived at 7 a.m., swept the floors, wiped down the counters, prepared breakfast and lunch. In the afternoon, she'd go grocery shopping and prep dinner so my father could reheat it later. Around 6 p.m., she'd stop by my house, help peel vegetables, toss a ball with the dog, or share a quick laugh with Daniel. She worked quietly, never complained, and my father seemed content, especially after Elisa figured out how to brew his tea just right and gently massaged his wrists when the weather turned cold. I started to relax. Many days when I stopped by, I'd find her dusting the framed wedding photo of my parents or neatly marking blood pressure meds, morning on the calendar. Once I arrived early and saw her airing out the blankets on the balcony, humming softly to herself. That old house no longer felt lonely. Then one evening over dinner, my father set down his chopsticks and said, "Why don't we let the girl stay the night? It's not safe for her to head home late. And if something happens to me at night, who's going to hear me?" I was surprised. He was never fond of having strangers in the house, but somehow Elisa had changed his mind. I turned to ask her. Elisa lowered her head. "If that's all right, I'd be grateful. I don't really have a fixed place. I've been crashing with people I know here and there." I nodded. "Let's try it for now. If it works out, we'll figure out the rest." And maybe that decision, which felt like such a small kindness, opened a door. A door that led our family quietly into the eye of a storm. There was no thunder, no hail, just tiny changes, week by week. And a belly that grew silently 1 month at a time. I don't remember exactly when I first sensed that something was off. All I know is one morning while I was cooking, I overheard my father calling out to Elisa from the back porch. "Elisa, where'd you put the bread bottom drawer next to the peanut butter?" "Huh, found it." "Boil the beans for lunch, all right. I want them hot." I paused. Since when had my father started calling her Elisa sweetie, I didn't think too much of it. He was getting older. Maybe after months of her caring for him, affection had naturally formed. But one afternoon when I dropped by unannounced, I found him napping on the porch. Inside, Elisa was leaning against the sink, both hands cradling her stomach, eyes closed. Not from exhaustion, but as if she were quietly listening to her own body. "Are you all right?" I asked. She startled quickly, letting go of her belly. "Yes, ma'am, just a little sore. I'm sorry." I nodded, but something inside me stirred. She was still diligent, still punctual, still polite. But the shadows under her eyes had deepened. Her steps were slower. One afternoon, I found her vomiting in the bathroom just after mopping the floor. "Are you sick, Elisa?" "No, probably just something I ate from the market." I didn't press her. But the third time, when she nearly collapsed in the backyard while hanging tablecloths, I couldn't pretend anymore. I took her to the clinic in town. On the way back, she was silent, clutching a small paper bag that held the test results. I drove with my eyes straight ahead. The air in the car grew heavy like tears that hadn't fallen yet. When we got home, I said nothing. Waited until Daniel had left for class, then poured 2 glasses of water and sat across from her at the kitchen table. "Elisa, please, can you tell me, ma'am, you're pregnant, aren't you?" She lowered her head, hands trembling over the paper bag, shoulders quivering. "Yes. How far along? Almost 4 months." I froze, which meant she was already pregnant when my father asked if she could start staying overnight. So whatever happened had happened before that. And suddenly, like a reflex terrifying and cold, the question burst from me. Was it my father? Elisa looked up instantly, eyes wide and wet, shaking her head hard. No, never. I swear, Mr. Harold has always treated me like family. I couldn't. I exhaled, relieved but only for a moment. If it wasn't my father, then who? She didn't answer, just lowered her head as tears slipped down in silence. I pressed her gently. She shook her head. I can't say. Please, ma'am. Let me stay a few more months. I'll leave once I've saved enough to go home. I didn't know what to do. I was angry, confused, full of pity. But above all, I was afraid. Afraid that something unforgivable had happened right under our own roof. So I began to watch more closely. The way Daniel looked at Elisa, the way Elisa avoided his gaze, the way they never stood closer than 5 steps apart. And that evening, as I came upstairs from the kitchen, I saw Daniel sitting curled up by the window, his face buried in his hands. On the table beside him was a small, pale blue box, the kind used for necklaces or keepsakes. I sat beside him and gently touched his shoulder. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" He didn't reply, not for a long time. Then finally he whispered, "Mom, if someone made a mistake, a big one, but never meant to hurt anyone, is there a way to make it right?" I stayed there beside him. That question cut through me, quietly and like a knife, and I had no answer. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the sound of Elisa's footsteps to and from the bathroom, to the soft tapping of Daniel's keyboard behind his door, to the shards of truth beginning to scrape against each other inside my chest. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was the real storm had begun. And it didn't come with rain, only silence in full form. I thought Elisa would leave. She began waking up earlier, working more meticulously, smiling less. Every morning, I'd see her rest her hand gently on her belly before stepping out of her room like a silent apology. She whispered only to herself. I didn't say anything. No scolding, no questions, no advice. But inside, I felt like someone standing in front of a house with a hairline crack, knowing full well that if I didn't act soon, it would collapse. I thought I should speak to Daniel, but he was the same as always finished dinner, went upstairs, kept a respectful, almost stranger-like distance from Elisa. And it was that respectful distance that began to terrify me. That Sunday afternoon, I was folding laundry when I noticed Daniel standing in the laundry room doorway clutching a piece of paper. His face was pale, eyes cast down. "Mom, do you have a minute?" His voice was quieter than usual. I nodded and wiped my hands. We sat on the front porch where my father used to sip tea. He was away that week visiting my aunt. The late afternoon sun filtered through the sapodilla tree in the yard, casting slow-moving shadows across the wooden steps. Daniel didn't look at me. He held the unfolded page in his lap and spoke like someone walking through fog. I wasn't planning to say anything. I really thought I could just let it pass. But now I just feel like a coward. I clenched my hands on my knees. The breeze stirred. A dry leaf spun gently onto the steps. It was after my 19th birthday. Everyone had gone to bed early. I went downstairs for water. Elisa had just come out of the bathroom. She was wearing a thin nightshirt. Probably didn't know I was still up. His voice grew hoarse. I closed my eyes. My heart felt like it was being pressed rhythm by rhythm under someone's thumb. I didn't think much, but as she turned to go back to her room, I said, something. Just something stupid. I don't even remember what. But when she turned around to look at me, her eyes looked sad. And then it happened. No one forced anyone. It wasn't planned. Just one foolish minute. One moment where I acted on nothing but my immature, selfish instinct. I said nothing, didn't cry, just sat in silence. She left early the next morning, avoided me after that, and I pretended nothing had happened. I was a coward, Mom, I really was. Daniel turned toward me. His eyes were rimmed with red. I don't know what to do now, but I know I can't let Elisa carry this all by herself. I looked at my son. No longer the boy in dinosaur t-shirts, no longer the kid who biked to school in the snow, but a young man who had made his first real mistake, one no book had ever taught him how to fix. I didn't yell, didn't punish. I just reached out, gently touched his shoulder and said, "You're only a coward if you choose to run. But if you face it starting today, you're not." That night, I asked Elisa to sit at the dining table. I placed a glass of water in front of her, then called Daniel in. The kitchen fell completely still. Daniel lowered his head. "You don't have to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm sorry. And I'll do anything to take responsibility if you'll let me." Elisa looked at Daniel for a long time, a very long time. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her lips stayed pressed shut. Then she said, "I don't need anyone to take responsibility. I just need a safe place for my baby to be born." I stepped in. "You're both still young. I don't know what either of you is capable of yet, but I do know this. This baby is not a mistake. This baby is a life, and if you both want, I will be here. With you." The room fell quiet again, but for the first time in months I saw light in both of their eyes. Just a little, but real. In the days that followed, Daniel took a leave from school. He got a job at a hardware warehouse. I helped Elisa sign up for sewing classes. They didn't share a room, didn't rush to call each other husband and wife. They just started again like two people who had made a mistake trying to learn how to begin again. And me, someone who thought she had grown too old, I learned something no book had ever taught me. That being a mother isn't always about teaching. Sometimes it's about learning how to forgive, even your own child. Elisa gave birth in early spring just as the cypress tree by the porch began to sprout new buds, and the morning air smelled like damp earth after a night of rain. She went into labor at 2 a.m. Daniel drove her to the hospital, hands trembling like a boy riding a bike for the first time. I followed close behind, carrying a bag of baby clothes, a soft robe, and a half-finished wool blanket I had started knitting last year. The delivery went smoothly, though Elisa lost quite a bit of blood. She was so exhausted, she drifted to sleep the moment she heard her baby cry. It was a girl, tiny, flushed red, her eyes barely open, fists curled like little beans. Daniel didn't dare hold her at first. He stood at the window, eyes filled with tears, a quiet smile on his face. "Have you thought of a name?" I asked softly. Daniel looked at his daughter again, then whispered Lily, "because she's strong and gentle, like the flower." I nodded. "Lily Rivera." I didn't tell my father right away. He returned a few weeks later from visiting my aunt, still drank his tea on the porch, still read the paper in print, still grumbled about kids these days whenever something on the news annoyed him. I knew the truth would hit him hard. He had lived his whole life by rules, pride, and appearances. But one afternoon he came home earlier than usual, just in time to see Elisa rocking Lily in the living room, Daniel sharpening a knife in the kitchen. There was no hiding it. He froze in the doorway, looked at Elisa, looked at the baby, then looked at me. "So, that child is your great-granddaughter," I said straight and unflinching. He said nothing, just quietly took off his shoes, went into his room, and shut the door. I thought he'd be angry. I thought he'd say something sharp, as he often did, but he didn't. He just stayed silent. The next morning, when I came downstairs, I found my father on the porch, holding Lily in his arms. His hands trembled slightly, but his grip was steady. The baby slept soundly against his shoulder. "She looks like Daniel when he was little," he murmured, not turning toward me. "Same little frown when she sleeps." That was his way of accepting it. Not with words, but with presence. And honestly, in families, some truths are louder when unspoken. Daniel returned to school after 3 months. No one forced him to take on responsibility. He chose it himself. He worked part-time, studied in the evenings, and helped Elisa with the baby at night. They lived in the small back room of my house, not far, but private enough. Elisa never asked to get married. "I don't want to be tied down just because of a mistake," she said. Daniel respected that, but I knew their feelings had changed. No longer a reckless moment, but something growing quietly every day, in late-night feedings, in the way they folded laundry together without speaking, in the shared silence that no longer felt like distance. I didn't push for a wedding. Mothers learn eventually that not everything needs to be sealed in paper. Some things are held together better by time and patience. When Lily turned 1, we threw a small party. Just a few neighbors, a simple cake, and a bouquet of white roses that Daniel had cut himself from the backyard. My father held Lily, looked around the room, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm old. I've made my share of mistakes. But looking at this little girl, I feel like I've been given another chance." No one said anything, but I saw Elisa's eyes brim with tears. And Daniel, he just smiled gently, resting his hand on her back as if to say, "It's going to be okay now." And me, the woman who once thought our family would fall apart because of this baby, now felt that it was the baby who had saved us from collapse. Lily is 3 now. Soft curls, warm brown skin, and deep dimples just like her father. She loves to draw, asks impossible questions, and every morning she knocks on my father's door to ask, "Is Grandpa awake yet? I've got a story to tell him." He often pretends to be asleep until the exact moment she kisses his forehead and he opens his eyes. Our family isn't perfect, but now I no longer wish for it to be. Because I've learned it's not flawless families that are worth holding on to, it's the ones who choose forgiveness so they can stay together.